My husband had entirely abandoned his duties, leaving me with the overwhelming responsibility of caring for his ailing father and managing all our household chores. Each day, he would stay out until the early hours, rarely providing sufficient funds for our living expenses. Despite my deep love for my nursing career, I had resigned to dedicate myself entirely to his father's care. Yet, here he was again, asking me for more money. "We can't make ends meet with such a meager amount this month," I told him. "It's supposed to be your responsibility to manage our finances within the budget, but there's a limit to what's possible. How can you expect anything when you contribute nothing and dismiss the efforts of those who do?" My husband, aloof and condescending, shot back, "All you do is drain our finances without contributing. You're like a parasite." "How dare you say that?" I retorted. "If I leave, you won't last a day. Maybe you should be trying to keep me instead of threatening me." He waved the divorce papers in my face, arrogantly proclaiming his willingness to end our marriage at any moment. Tossing the papers at me, he stormed out of the room. I gathered them from the floor, spreading them out before me. A rueful smile crossed my face when I saw the title, Petition for Divorce. He was mistaken if he thought I would be the one devastated by our separation. Unbeknownst to him, I wasn't at all taken aback. I was prepared, having already envisaged a life beyond his shadow. With a mix of pity and determination, I dialed my lawyer's number. "My name is Kayla. I used to be a nurse at a private hospital, a demanding job with night shifts and relentless days. But it was my dream. Caring for others had always brought me deep fulfillment, as taxing as it was. Now, it was time to start reclaiming the life I had put on hold. I truly cherished my career, but due to conflicting schedules, my husband Vincent and I rarely spent much time together. Despite this, our marriage remained surprisingly smooth without any major conflicts. However, everything took a drastic turn following a sudden incident with Vincent's father, who was his only living family member at the time. He became severely incapacitated, unable to live on his own, and in desperate need of nursing care. Vincent, deeply concerned for his father, asked if I could step in to help. He proposed that I leave my job to care full-time for his father, promising to compensate by working harder and taking on more at home. Although reluctant, I understood the situation. I had always gotten along well with my father-in-law. He was a kind man who often put others before himself. Considering the discomfort he might feel with a stranger caring for him, I agreed to Vincent's plan, despite suggesting we explore professional nursing care options. Initially, everything seemed to go according to plan. We moved in with Vincent's father, and Vincent appeared to keep his promise of helping around the house. Although we had to tighten our belts financially, it was manageable. However, as months passed, the situation began to deteriorate. Vincent's initial bursts of helpfulness faded, and he gradually started neglecting his promises. Not only did he reduce the financial support he provided, but he also became increasingly absent, leaving me to manage the household and care duties alone. As our financial strain grew, my having quit my job halved our income. I found myself juggling the care of my father-in-law with searching for affordable groceries, often driving long distances to save money. Meals became simpler, especially when Vincent was not around. Our living arrangement, once believed manageable, now felt increasingly unsustainable as Vincent detached himself, spending his earnings freely and leaving the weight of our challenges solely on my shoulders. Life became incredibly tough when I had to stretch every dollar to its limit. New clothes and trips to the hairdresser became luxuries I could no longer afford. When the financial strain became unbearable, I approached Vincent for help, but any mention of money seemed to irritate him. "Hey, honey, about this month's living expenses." "I already gave you the money," Vincent interrupted sharply. "Yes, but it's less than last month. I can't make ends meet with this." "Are you kidding me? Managing the budget is your job," he snapped back. "But the budget is too tight since I quit my job. It's been a constant struggle. "Please, we need more for the household," I pleaded. "What the hell? It's my hard-earned money. How I spend it is up to me," he retorted, dismissing my concerns. "I'm not stopping you from spending, but I expect you to make do with what you get. Just because you were a nurse, you think you're so important. You used to make good money, but now you don't contribute financially. You're just a parasite living off my earnings. All you need to do is keep quiet and do as I say." His words were harsh, and his attitude only worsened when I pressed the issue. No matter how much I pleaded, Vincent refused to adjust the budget to make our lives a bit easier. Left with no other option, I started dipping into my savings from my days as a nurse. Each month was a battle, juggling our dire financial situation and enduring Vincent's verbal abuse. Yet, in all this hardship, my father-in-law was a beacon of kindness. Despite his challenges, he always expressed gratitude for even the smallest gestures of care. Aware of our struggles, he even offered his pension to help make ends meet. He was a genuinely nice man and became my sole source of emotional support. Vincent's difficult attitude and general approach to life were hard to bear, but the time I spent with my father-in-law was precious. His presence and support strengthened my resolve to do my best under challenging circumstances, holding on to the warmth and appreciation he extended towards me, even when things seemed most bleak. My brief moments of joy were tragically short-lived. Nearly 3 years into caring for him, my father-in-law passed away unexpectedly. That day, I traveled a bit further to the supermarket to take advantage of a special sale. Although I was concerned about leaving him alone, he reassured me with a smile and encouraged me not to worry. With his encouragement, I left with a peaceful heart, believing he was fine. Tragically, while I was away, he collapsed and never recovered. The guilt of not being there at that crucial moment haunted me deeply. I replayed the decision to leave him alone over and over, and the tears just wouldn't stop. Despite the overwhelming grief, I knew I couldn't dwell on my regrets forever. It was time to arrange his funeral. Vincent took on the role of chief mourner, but only for appearances. Behind the scenes, he left the bulk of the funeral preparations to me. Considering how much my father-in-law had supported me, I preferred handling the arrangements myself rather than risking Vincent's negligence. Despite the suddenness of it all, I threw myself into making the arrangements, which gave me a temporary escape from my sorrow. The process was grueling. I was so engrossed that it felt like my head was spinning, but it did help pull me out of my depression. Although it was infuriating to see Vincent yelling instructions one moment and then idly watching TV the next, I was determined to honor my father-in-law's memory properly. At the funeral, many attendees expressed their condolences to Vincent, not knowing the full extent of our domestic struggles. They sympathized with his loss, assuming he had been the one closely caring for his father. Their comments like, "It must have been hard to prepare everything so suddenly," and "You took really good care of him, he was fortunate to have such a fine son," were meant well, but they stung given the reality of our situation. I maintained my composure, responding with grace despite feeling pushed to my limit. "No, it's not hard at all," I would say, masking the truth of our strained circumstances. He raised me too, in a way, so I did my best for him. I clung to the belief that my care had brought him some comfort in his final years, hoping that would be enough for him to find peace. "I too hope that he appreciates everyone's presence today," Vincent said, wearing a practiced smile as he mingled with the funeral attendees. His friendly demeanor and the superficial conversations grated on me. Beneath his facade, he had done nothing to prepare for the funeral or to care for his father in his final days. I vividly remembered the sorrow in his father's eyes on the nights Vincent came home late, not bothering to share even a word with him. Now that he was gone, Vincent's pretense of being a devoted son was almost too much to bear. My disgust for him grew with each passing moment, and it was hard to shake off. Even after the funeral, my distaste for Vincent lingered. With my father-in-law no longer here, The main reason for tolerating our strained marriage was gone. The thought of divorce increasingly crossed my mind. I was torn, feeling both the revulsion towards him and the uncertainty of making such a big decision. I was procrastinating, unsure of what to do, held back by the remnants of a life that once was. The routine was the only thing keeping me going, but then an unexpected incident gave me a startling insight. One evening, I went to the local supermarket, only to find they were out of a seasoning I needed. Deciding to try another store a little further away, I made my purchase and headed outside. That's when I spotted Vincent, who was supposed to be at work. Curious and cautious, I kept my distance, watching him. He looked around nervously before entering a building. Above the door hung a large sign for a consumer finance company, a name I recognized but never expected to be part of our lives. A chill ran through me as if I had been plunged into an icy bath. My whole body reacted viscerally to the implications of what I was seeing, yet my mind was eerily calm and clear. It dawned on me that not only was Vincent failing to provide sufficient living expenses, but his actions were now leading him into potentially dire financial straits without my knowledge. The discovery crystallized my feelings and the reality of our situation, pushing me towards a decision I had been putting off. It was a revealing moment, one that underscored just how far apart our lives and values had drifted. The revelation that Vincent had been borrowing money without my knowledge left me stunned. I found myself questioning how long and how extensive his debts were. At that moment, the decision crystallized in my mind. I needed a divorce. I could no longer envision a future with someone who concealed such significant aspects of our financial lives. My dwindling feelings for him evaporated completely. That evening, I waited for him in the living room, the decision heavy but clear in my mind. When he finally walked through the door, the conversation that followed was terse. "Evening, Vincent. You're back late." "Yikes, what are you doing up so early? What's wrong? Can't I stay awake?" he retorted, clearly annoyed. "Nothing's wrong. I just want to go to bed," I replied, my tone flat. "Of course you do. You've been out until now, after all," he said, dismissing my concerns. "If you're going to be sarcastic, save it. I'm exhausted from working, unlike you," he snapped. "Right, I'm sorry," I said, pausing for a moment to gather my thoughts. "Actually, I have something important to tell you. Let's get a divorce." "Huh? What are you saying all of a sudden?" "I've been thinking about it for a while now," I continued calmly. "You've been living off me, and yet you ask how I will survive after the divorce? You hardly provide enough for me to live on as it is. Besides, as a nurse, I managed before, and I can manage again. If using money is such an issue, then yes, I think a divorce is the best step." Stunned, he locked himself in the bedroom. The next day, true to his word, albeit reluctantly, he took a day off and accompanied me to our lawyer. He signed the divorce petition with a heavy thud on the lawyer's desk. Our separation turned out to be simpler than I had expected. Throughout, Vincent kept mumbling about regret, but I chose to ignore him. I decided to return to my parents' home temporarily. Upon explaining the situation, they offered their full support. Encouraged by their backing, I began packing up my belongings, ready to start anew, free from the weight of a marriage that had become untenable. While sorting through my things, I decided to clean my father-in-law's room one last time. In a chest of drawers, I stumbled upon his will. Curious but composed, I informed Vincent, who, to my surprise, showed an unexpected burst of excitement. He tore open the envelope and devoured the contents with eyes wide. However, his enthusiasm quickly turned to dismay as he read it aloud, mumbling that there must be some mistake. From the document he hastily dropped beside him, I gathered that the will left several stocks which his father owned to me. Additionally, it included a heartfelt letter expressing gratitude towards me. Vincent, in disbelief, protested, "No, this can't be true. I'm the only son. Normally I inherit everything, don't I?" "That may be so, but the will clearly states otherwise," I replied calmly. "This is ridiculous. This can't be valid," he sputtered. But the signature of his father was unmistakable. The shock was too much for him. He fainted and collapsed on the floor. Quickly, I called an ambulance, but as I watched the paramedics take him away, I felt like I was already removed from his life. There seemed no reason to delay my departure any longer, so I finished packing and left for my parents' home. Once settled, I reached out to one of Vincent's relatives who had always been kind to me to inform her about the divorce. She listened intently, her expression growing more pained as I recounted my story. After I finished, she embraced me warmly, her demeanor awkward and troubled. She then revealed in a hushed voice that Vincent had accrued a substantial gambling debt long before we moved in with his father, a habit that had started shortly after we got married. His frequent visits to consumer finance companies had even sparked rumors in our small community. Her revelations added a new layer of understanding to the struggles we had faced, confirming that my decision to leave was justified. The support from Vincent's relative was comforting, reaffirming that I was not alone in recognizing the difficulties brought on by his actions. It was deeply unsettling to realize that while I was oblivious, others in our community were well aware of Vincent's financial troubles, and the rumors were rampant. Before moving in with my father-in-law, my life had been consumed by my job. Afterward, my entire focus shifted to caregiving, leaving no room for social interactions where such information might have come to light. Meanwhile, Vincent had been misleading people, confidently claiming that he would swiftly clear his debts with his expected inheritance, a certainty in his mind that everyone seemed to know about but me. The rumors inevitably reached his father, prompting him to draft a will that decidedly left Vincent out, likely as a measure to correct his son's misguided expectations and irresponsible behaviors. Vincent, who had carelessly accumulated debts across various quarters, was banking entirely on an inheritance that he never received. When he realized he was getting nothing, the shock was too much for him and he fainted. After a brief hospital stay, Vincent was discharged and faced the grim reality of having to manage his debts on his own, now scraping by day to day. I, on the other hand, returned to my parents' home, took some time to gather my thoughts and heal, and eventually went back to my nursing career. Being back at work, immersed in a profession I love, has been rejuvenating. For now, I have no interest in thinking about marriage again. My priority is my career, dedicating myself to a job that brings fulfillment and stability. The return to nursing not only marks a return to normalcy, but also a step towards rebuilding my independence and focusing on my well-being